Hello everyone, my name is Adam Michael Anthony Simpson and you're watching my YouTube channel, Adam M.A. Simpson. Today I'll be speaking about
Lab notebooks.
Lab notebooks.
lab notebooks. You may be wondering why I'm spending time talking about lab notebooks. Well, to be honest, I think that keeping good track of your results is crucial to obtaining useful and publishable data. Here's what I do to stay on track so that 1 to 2 years down the line, once I've obtained all my publishable data, I can write my manuscript with ease and with guaranteed validity and reliability. Here's a picture of a typical lab notebook. You see a title along with name, date, and the standard notebook layout with lines. So, really filling out the name and date and having it signed by a third party is usually a government lab kind of thing. But I like to name and date my pages because it keeps everything neat, and once I leave the lab, and side note, you are supposed to leave your lab notebook in the lab at all times, but once I leave the lab and graduate, members of my current lab, Professor William Mitch's lab, can go into my notebook and see the various procedures that I've done and hopefully replicate that data, knowing that I did it, and they know the paper that was published on that data, so they know that the results they get should be valid and reliable. Getting back to writing about lab notebooks. Start by obviously titling the page. Here I'm going to title the page as Making Buttered Toast.
Very scientific.
Then I usually write an objective. In the objective section, I try to contextualize the need for having a new entry in the lab notebook. For example, if I burnt the toast in yesterday's procedure, I'll write an objective that says, re-pursuing the toasting of toast to avoid burning the toast by turning the setting to a lower setting. Something of that effect, so that 1 to 2 years down the line, when I'm checking or trying to amalgamate all of my data for this publication, I can go back to the page of that procedure in my lab notebook to see what was going on and if the data is relevant to the points I'm trying to prove in that manuscript. Also, I know the exact conditions and any caveats for that procedure that I need to be clear about in my manuscript. After writing the objective, then I write the procedure for the day. Now, writing the procedure is really just writing out the steps that you're going to take on that day of experimentation. Now, I believe that you should try to be as consistent as possible, so I suggest referencing previous lab notebooks or the other sections of the same lab notebook where you seem to get useful data from in the past. That is after carrying out months and months of method development, which is creating a valid and reliable experimental scheme, like making the best toast possible. You need to reference the exact data and lab notebook section or lab notebook that you are trying to re-execute. I do this by first writing my first initial, which is A, the letter A. Second, placing a period mark followed by the number lab notebook that I'm writing in. So right now I'm on my 7th lab notebook, so current lab notebook reference would be A7. Third, placing another period mark followed by the number page of the lab notebook that I'm trying to reference. If I'm referencing my 6th lab notebook on page 173, I'll say procedure taken from A6173, which is the 173rd page of my 6th lab notebook that I'm trying to re-execute the conditions of the experiment on that page. What this allows me to do is easily identify the conditions of the experiment that I'm trying to pursue, so that when I'm writing my manuscript for a publication, I can easily find the methodology and write this in the manuscript. After referencing the procedure, I highly recommend that you rewrite your procedures, just because there's always this one small step that if you forget to do, it throws the whole experiment off, and you may have to repeat the experiment just because you forgot to spike some internal standard or surrogate, or in this case use the right type of butter to make the toast taste good. So you need to rewrite your procedure just so that you can stay consistent and remind yourself of those small things that you might forget about. After you're done writing your procedure and signing and dating the page, I have one little piece of advice just to help save some time.
Side note.
So for publications, it's usually an amalgamation of multiple experiments over a long period of time. So in the end, when you're writing the manuscript, it becomes a little bit confusing if you weren't very good at keeping a readable lab notebook and staying on track of which data sets are important for the manuscript. So what I do is, if I'm putting together a data set in an Excel file from an instrument, or naming an image that I want to use on my manuscript, I'll always include the lab note page that I'm referencing so that I can know where in my lab notebook this data is coming from, and I can also verify that the data is from this experiment that worked. This way, it makes the experiment repeatable so that your critics or the reviewers down the line, or people who are trying to repeat your experiments down the line, can say that, oh, this data makes sense. And it's because you can already verify the conditions under which this experiment was exactly done, because you kept your lab notebook to date. And so for example, on this lab notebook data entry, if I wanted to reference a data file like a picture of the toast that I just made, I label the image of the toast with the lab notebook page A723, so that I can go back once I'm done this lab notebook and done this experiment, say that I did this experiment with these conditions following the procedure from a previous thing, and everything will be right there, and I won't have to worry about it when I'm writing the manuscript. So it saves time and keeps everything tidy, and you know that your data was right, and you don't have to worry that someone's gonna say that your data is wrong. Thank you for watching this episode. Please like and subscribe, and click the bell if you want to get the notifications of a new episode. This is a very short show this week. Getting strapped for time. Not really, but stay tuned for next week, and thank you for supporting me.